had a lot of backwash about men of the trees. And we'd say, but this was 1922, it meant people, it meant women, children, but a lot of the 1980s people couldn't see that. They thought it was sexist. And then when we looked at our membership records, we had more women than men. It was interesting, you asked what attracted me to St Barb. I'd been in a garden club and I grew out of the garden club. I felt that's just inside people's fences. There's more outside their fences that they need to be involved with. And I had a bigger vision of gardening, and that's when I responded to St Barb's idealism. We struggled to get people involved, but come the 90s, it was declared the decade of land care, and Bob Hawke was a Prime Minister, and he said we're going to plant 1 million trees. And there were all sorts of campaigns like that, but the community was beginning to see the need for it. Now this was our very first planting at Hilda Road School, and that is my elder grandson, who is now 35. And that's Ross McKinnon. That was a good heading, family trees in the making. There were school family groups. This was when I took St Barb out to Sunnybank School, and he planted this tree for the school. I'm very grateful that people like Marion, and have you met Fran yet? Had the courage to stay with Men of the Trees when it looked as though there wasn't going to be another leader. And Fran and Marion are doing a fantastic job now, and they've got younger people involved. I guess the people who were involved with me, we had all grown a little older and didn't have the same energy, and we needed younger people. It's great to go back to a big planting like Samson Vale, where we undertook revegetation of a dry rainforest area. It had all been cleared for dairying, and then had been let go, and a lot of weedy stuff there. So there was a little remnant area in the middle, and we circled it with about 50,000 trees, and that was quite something. I think some great things have come out of it. An organisation called SOWN, Save Our Waterways Now, which Brian Hallinan, who was a member of Men of the Trees and the Ashgrove Gap councillor at the time, he really got that going, and that's an outlet for people to plant trees. And a lot of creek bank work was done, which was good restoration work.
I've never forgotten the first time I met St Barb. I'd been asked by the daughter-in-law of our neighbours at 8 Mile Plains to go accompany her to the airport to meet him, as she was a bit nervous about going by herself. So we got out to the airport, and it was quite a long time waiting, because the plane had come from China, and Qantas had insisted upon putting him in a wheelchair, and he was quite a while coming through customs. And when he finally came through the door, he was a bit stroppy because of the being consigned to the wheelchair was beneath his dignity. And I'd by that time found myself, Peggy was talking to someone, I found myself pushed forward to the front, and I've never forgotten, as he came through the door, our eyes met, and it was like an electric shock of recognition, a feeling that I knew him. I don't know if you want me to add it, but I do now believe in reincarnation, and I knew I'd known him before. And that was why it fell. There was no doubt in my mind that I'd known him before. Yeah, so I think, well, it was, what was coming off him was his sincerity, his enthusiasm and excitement, his passion for it, just moved people. And also too, it was absolutely right for that time, where people were concerned about what was happening, and he just struck a chord, didn't he?
He was a very impressive person.
He was.
And he just lived every minute of the day about trees, and that really was what it was all about. It was very infectious, and once he started talking and demanding, because he was good at demanding,
Yeah.
and he demanded that you take part in it with him, and you got totally immersed in the whole thing.
I've got a photograph somewhere of myself shaking hands with him, but he was in a group with many people. He didn't have time to spend much time with me, but because I knew the Nicholases, I got lots of stories about his personal things, and I'd read so many of his books. And when I met him, I shook his hand and felt his presence, and I didn't need actually to have any discussion with him. I could feel that it was all there. Then I met him another time, again for just a few seconds, but I'd heard him speak, and yes, I just thoroughly identified with him.
I'm one of those people that nearly met him, you know, got close. This shed and nursery belongs to the Sown scheme, which was started off as a project of Men of the Trees and became bigger than its parent, and now is one of Brisbane's biggest independent environmental organisations. Has its own wonderful shed here, its own nursery. You'll find it in the phone book. It'll be called the Greening Australia Nursery, but officially it's still called the St Barb Baker Nursery, from the days when it belonged to the Men of the Trees. And the cottage itself, the environmental centre, is Twahamwe Cottage, so named after the famous password of the original Men of the Trees in Kenya, the Kikuyu warriors. Probably 3 times as big as what it was when we had it. Come on in there, Mary. Oh. So Joe is the current incumbent of Twahamwe Cottage and managing it beautifully.
I am.
Of course you do partly your own propagation. I mean, you seed collection and propagation yourself as well?
We do. We consider ourselves a provenance nursery, so we seed collect within about 150k radius of this nursery. We grow the plants on and get it out to the public, and we promote where we can. Yeah, now at the moment I'm trying to run a promotion for regional landholders to engage in land repair and regeneration. That's the idea. Following in your grandfather's footsteps.
How long have you been working here for?
I've been here for 12 months now. Yeah.
Great.
Yes,
So
and interesting.
what does your work involve, mainly?
Well, I'm managing nursery here, so looking after volunteers, making sure that we've got seed on board, making sure that we've got production following through, and always looking for, what would you say, more people, more contacts to sell plants to, but also promoting native plants as well.
So do you supply the native plants to a lot of the planting groups around Brisbane?
We do, yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, actually, let's be more accurate. We're relatively small, so we produce about 80,000 plants a year, which is not large by any means. So there's much larger people out there which are producing millions of plants a year, but we do what we can. We're a small cog in a big wheel. Yeah.
So how many plants have you probably produced over the last 12 months?
About 80,000, yeah, at least. Yeah. So we had one large order went out. I think the largest order we had last year was 10,000 plants. We had a couple of orders of 10,000 plants. Yeah.
When Men of the Trees offered the nursery to Greening Australia, and as I say, they accepted, and later on the whole lease was handed over as well. In exchange for the nursery, GA very kindly gave us in return, which is what keeps us going, 5,000 trees a year, free of charge, gratis, from the nursery stock for our own plantings, which is a huge basis for what we do. We couldn't exist without it. So Greening Australia is our largest sponsor, Men of the Trees' largest, most important sponsor, that we have. Council comes next, councils come next, and so on. But without GA's contribution, we wouldn't have enough home propagators. We're only a small group of planters, people who want to plant rather than propagate. We wouldn't be able to exist. So this is the most important liaison that we have here with GA. Diploglottis campbellii. It's one of the world's rarest trees. Only a handful back of Currumbin or somewhere in the hinterland of the Gold Coast, where they still grow in the wild. Not very many grow, but as you can see, they've got going, so people can plant them in their gardens. One of the biggest, most beautiful fruit trees as well. They produce beautiful jam if you can if you can make native jam.
Good shady and street. So they're dry rainforests. So
Yes,
they look really quite lush.
Oh, what dry rainforest is pretty lush. Yes, it's you know, it's the sort of rainforest we have around here. Just most of the dry rainforest.
Okay.
Yes. So,
And does that help with keeping the? What are they good for? Other than being
oh well, I mean they're one of the community known as the dry rainforest, which was the richest where the richest soil existed. Of course, all along the east coast was in the dry scrubs, the dry rainforest scrubs, and they got removed because the soil was so good. That's why they all got removed, and now they were the habitat for so much wildlife. So many of our native trees of that came from there, and now some of them, like this one, is threatened because they've been taken out, and there's very few of them left.
soil is that?
The soil was used for farming, and yes, and now the dry scrubs where they exist are very few.
And
indeed.
is the soil like it was?
Oh, well, where they've never been touched. Yes.
But now where they've been cleared, that's.
Oh well, yes. I know. So of course, the men of the trees, of course, with other people, are trying to put them back in various places. But nothing. As President Barb himself said, nothing can replace the original forest.